And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure, in fact, that the storm is really over. But one thing is certain: when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. Haruki Murakami. Welcome back to Blurred Summits. My name is Abdul.
I am Hudson.
And I'm Immad.
We are going to be talking about 2020. 2020 has been a tough year for almost everybody. That's a statement that we can say pretty certainly. But what we want to do today on Gratitude Friday is look at some of the positives. Yeah, sure, 2020 has been a terrible year. But if we only focus on the negatives, then we won't really be able to come out of things in a positive light and be able to improve our lives. So today we want to talk about some things that we're grateful for in 2020. So how do you guys feel that you have personally grown through this year?
I feel like on a mental side of things, I've definitely found that I've grown my mental strength, I guess is the way to put it. Because obviously with all this stuff, with how much people have been kind of in isolation away from people, we've been forced to test ourselves mentally to keep ourselves stable, do all that stuff. Like obviously at the start of it all, mental health, all that side of things, big mess. But obviously as things kind of developed, I realized that this was an opportunity to grow, strengthen myself mentally, make myself a better person. So then if any challenges happen again down the line, I know how to combat them and not let my mental side of things beat myself up on it. So through, basically persevering, keeping my head high, obviously hoping for the best, I was able to look out for myself mentally and now basically build a wall of defense in my brain and my mind from anything bad. So then it kind of has to fight its way in, which doesn't necessarily look that easy to do now. So hopefully things will be, mental strength has definitely been the big thing for me to strengthen upon. And sorry, that was a bit rambled on about, but I think I kind of got the message across there.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me personally, at the start of it, we just had so much time that was just freed up. I'd have a full schedule Monday to Friday, maybe sometime on the weekends. But now, you're home, it's like, okay, you have 3 hours of classes and nothing else. And first, it was kind of paralyzing with all that time. It's like, what do you do? And like a lot of people, I was on my phone most of the time, right? My screen time was over 10 hours a day. It was really bad.
Yeah.
But I think just time management has been a big thing. And I think I've learned that everyone's got their own thing. You might work better in the evening or in the morning or whatever. But I think just finding the way you work, and that's kind of what I learned about myself, how I work and where I
Mm,
work best. And that's
yeah.
kind of what really this year was for me.
Yeah. I think a big thing for myself was independence. Like, I didn't realize how dependent I was on other people until 2020 rolled around, right? Like, I used to think of myself as like, okay, I'm a fairly independent person. I can hold my own and all that. And then 2020 comes around, and, when push comes to shove, I'm really tested to prove that independence. I fell apart, and I realized, wow, I actually relied on a lot of people for my happiness or for my work ethic or for a lot of these things that I used to pride myself on. And now that I didn't have this network around me that pushed me to do, good things, I was falling apart. So 2020 really taught me how to be independent, truly independent, to where I could be by myself and still do the things that had to get done. And it was a very challenging experience, and something that I failed at pretty much for the majority of 2020, maybe even till now. Um, Something that I'm really, but it really became obvious, right? It really became obvious when 2020 rolled around. Like, okay, I am not as independent as I think I am, and I do need to strengthen who I am as a person, because who knows if a pandemic is going to roll around again, or a circumstance in your life is going to come around where you're all alone, right? Where you move to a new school or a different university or a different country altogether, and you know nobody. So then, like, what are you going to do then? And I realized, wow, I'm way less equipped than I thought I was.
Yeah, I think there's something with the independent side of thing, which really everyone got tested with this year. Like everyone was forced to find ways to, yeah, persevere, be happy, do basically anything on their own. And I think the people who are already able to do that obviously thrived in this kind of environment because they didn't really need anyone for anything, right? And it really forced a lot of people to change who they are to be that type of person. And I think any of those type of people who are independent and don't actually need anyone, I guess some would say they're almost scary how good they are at just being able to do things by themselves, be happy by themselves, be productive by themselves, do all these things where they genuinely don't need anyone for anything. And they can live independently from everything and be the best person they are without needing anyone to give them any lift or anything.
And dude, like one thing that's kind of weird, like it was kind of weird at first, but like I learned to embrace it, was like just hearing my own voice a lot more throughout the day, like in my head, than normal. Because like normally, like you're at school, you got classes, you're talking to people, right? But when you're at home and you just got work to do, you're like talking to yourself like a lot more, right?
Yeah.
So, and it was really weird at first. Like you have to kind of, and it's good and bad because like you've got sometimes you're beating yourself down, but sometimes you're motivating yourself. But I think a lot of people, they just learn to live with their thoughts, and for some people that's kind of scary. But if you can take advantage of that, then I think it's super powerful.
Yeah. And I think that one of the blessings of 2020 is that you can't run away from your thoughts anymore. You have to come face to face with them. And it's a very scary thing. Like you said, it's a very scary thing to do initially. But I think that if you avoid it, then that's a lot more destructive, right? That's naturally a lot more destructive to avoid being with yourself. Like if you're scared of who you are internally and you use all these external mechanisms to run away from them, then I think you're going to run into a lot of problems in the future, right? Yeah, I was talking to myself too a ton, and like it was just like you have nothing else to do, right? You don't have these distractions anymore. Like you are forced to be by yourself, and I think that's like a blessing in disguise. For me personally, at least, was being forced to be by myself. Whereas from before, I could distract myself with people, with events, with whatever.
Yeah, there's something about being on your own which it's insane. It's incredibly powerful to be able to be by yourself, and then
It's
you
a
be the only one
skill.
who's really you're the one who's kind of putting yourself under pressure, putting yourself, challenging yourself on things, right? You don't have anyone around you to push you, motivate you, or anything.
Yeah.
Like so many people I know, like at least recently or in the past, they had to rely on other people for their happiness or for any of that side of things, right? And it's as soon as you become reliant on other people, things become incredibly uncertain because you're hoping outside factors are only coming in and impacting you in a positive way, so then you can then be happy yourself.
Yeah.
But as soon as you become kind of independent on yourself or independent and then only relying on yourself, the only person that determines your happiness is you at that point. And then that is
Yeah.
where you can control literally everything, right? Like we're
And the
basically
truth
everything.
is, like, we're on this journey by ourselves. Life is an independent journey, right? It's not intertwined or dependent or reliant on other people. Everybody is kind of on their own track. Regardless of who your friends are, they're on their own tracks. Even if you get married, right? Like, marriage is when two people come together, but they're two separate streams. They're still independent of one another. They're just now making a decision to go on this journey side by side. It doesn't mean that the journey is inherently together, right? Like at the end of the day, we are all by ourselves. It's kind of a depressing thought.
Right? Look at how many people
Yeah.
they come together for a second, like, yeah, I'm done with this, and they
Yeah. Yeah.
break it off, right?
So it's like, you definitely have to be reliant on yourself, because the certainty that the things you rely on are going to be there It's not there, and that's what 2020 really showed us, is that these things that we took as a certainty. I am certain I'm going to have my friends. I'm certain I'm going to have maybe even my family. I'm certain that I'm going to have, these people around me. Okay, well, just kidding. That's not a certainty. You thought it was. Too bad, so sad.
Yeah.
Right? And now you don't have them anymore. And so what are you going to do when you're just by yourself? It's liberating, but at the same time, it's definitely scary. And I think
Yeah,
that
it's
that's a very amazing thing to pursue, is this independence, this like journey that you're embarking on.
Yeah, it's definitely like a mountain to climb to get to a point where it goes from being kind of a negative, like the being by yourself, to it being a positive being by yourself, being able to do things yourself. But I think, yeah, once you get to the top of that, get to the top of the peak and you're just able to see things from this independent point of view where you don't actually need people, it is, yeah, it's liberating because you don't have anything holding you down, anything dragging you each direction, right? You don't have anyone who is forcing you in a direction that'll change who you are, change your mood, change things like that.
Why do you guys think that we relied on people?
It almost felt like it's probably like a security thing. It's a distraction. It's something so then you don't actually have to do things by yourself. Because before you're always like, hey, if you want to make a decision, you're like, hey, what do you think about this? They'll tell you what they think. Maybe you're thinking the other way, right? They'll skew you that way. You'll go with what they want because it's like, oh, peer acceptance. It's always sort of the thing of peer pressure, right? I guess it's sort of that similar idea with the reliance on other people, because I think you want their acceptance, you want their thoughts, you want their whatever their opinion is.
I think like we're also like before this year, like we were trying to drown out our own voice. Like as horrible as that sounds, like we were trying to like find distractions to because like a lot of the time, like we know what we need to do. Like as Hudson, you were saying, like we would ask other people's opinion. Like at the end of the day, like what it's like, you genuinely, no one knows you better than yourself, right? And you can ask them for advice, right? But like at the end of the day, for most things, like what you should do, right? And so, but I think it was just we just wanted distractions from our own voice, because like sometimes the truth kind of hurts, and sometimes we want people to tell us like to hype us up when we really shouldn't be hyped up, and sometimes we have other people bring us down when we should actually be hyping ourselves up.
Yeah.
So how do we avoid that trap after the pandemic? Like after we go back and now we're in person again and we have our friends around us, like how do we make sure that we don't fall back into that trap, right? If it's such a glamorous thing, right? It's what we desire, right? So how do we stay independent when those opportunities present themselves again?
Well, I think the biggest issue with all this was us asking for, I guess, support and decision making when you already know the answer that you want, right? Like how many times have you guys asked someone for their opinion, asked someone for their insights when you already knew the outcome and you already knew what you wanted to hear?
Yeah.
Like, have you guys have had that experience where you ask people, hey, what do you think?
Like
but you already know
like
what
you're
you
asking the person, but you only want one answer.
Yeah. That's a sign of you being like, it's moments like those that you can just avoid now that we understand the independence, right? Because those were just you just looking for confirmation, looking for something positive behind it. But then you can now avoid that because you know the outcome. So just don't ask them because you can trust yourself now, right?
Yeah.
Definitely comes down to trusting yourself and having confidence. Like once you have those two things, like we won't be as reliant on other people. And like obviously you need to have people who can like tell you when you're messing up, right? Because we're not perfect. But like with the little things, right? I think we should start being a bit more confident in ourselves because we do have the ability.
Yeah. I think it's also because now we know what it's like to be in the deep end, right? From before, it was such a scary thing. Like to be by yourself and alone is a very scary thing. It's, even from just a survival standpoint, it's a scary thing to be by yourself, right? Because when you're by yourself, you could die. You want to be around people. And so that's why we relied so much on those around us. And now we realize, wait a second, it's actually not as scary as I thought it was. and I won't die if I'm by myself. And now that I am by myself, maybe there's something for me to discover that I couldn't discover when I was with other people, right? And I think that's such a liberating thought in its own, knowing that, okay, now I'm in the deep end, that deep end being independence, right? Now
Yeah.
I'm alone in the deep end where I thought I would be drowning, right? But I'm not drowning. In fact, I learned a lot more than when I was hanging out at the shallow end where I thought it was safe, right?
Well, I guess, yeah, you could look at the I guess the dependence as like the shackles, right? And as you get dragged
Mm,
into the deep end, you're still getting yanked down by those shackles, getting pulled further and farther and down. But
yeah,
as soon as you free yourself from those shackles, the deep end's no different from the shallow end. You know how to swim,
yeah.
so you can just keep yourself up. You're able to thrive no different in one or the other. But
If you can swim
again,
in the shallow end, you can swim in the deep end, right? Like
yeah,
swimming, you know? But for some reason we thought we'd drown in the deep end. And then 2020 tossed us in the deep end. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, it's like you went from the baby pool just deep into the ocean, middle of the
Exactly.
ocean.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, parents like trying to teach their kids how to swim. It's like Middle Eastern parents just toss their kid in the deep end and like let him survive. It's like that's how you learn, eh? Yeah. So what
And
do
I
you
don't know.
guys like? What excites you about the future? Right? Like we're getting
Oppor-
into 2021. What's exciting, man? Like, well, what's there to look forward to when you
Well,
wake
I
up?
guess for us, we're coming to a point where we're nearing the end, I guess, to some degree, our university journey or our educational journey. So I guess the exciting thing now is then we'll be soon in the world. We'll be living members of society, right? Point where then
Mm,
we'll be able to go off and do our own in like because obviously lots of work stuff you're in group settings, you'll be doing stuff with teams and stuff. Then we'll be able to work on a bunch of individual projects, things like that you might not have been able to before because you've been doing school where you had full days taken up by that stuff, right?
yeah.
So in theory with work, you'll have work during the day and then you have mornings and evenings to do whatever you'd like. And then you can take advantage of that stuff to do side hustles, to do projects. Like this would be a whole lot easier to do if we weren't in school because then what are we doing on the weekends when you have work? Nothing, right? So then
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to schedule stuff when you don't have school or don't have so then you can at least then plan stuff and then grow as an individual way outside of what you could have done with the shackles of school behind you.
Yeah. I'm excited for like the potential that the next
Yeah.
while could be. You know what I'm saying? Like the potential I feel like is so much bigger than what it used to be. Like when you're in high school and stuff like that and like university, yeah, you can do things, but it's difficult because you're being pulled down a little bit by, schoolwork or, if you're in high school, like you have to be there from
Well, and your
9
limiting
to
factor
3
too is
p.m.,
money,
right?
right? Like money's a limiting factor when you're in high
Money,
school, even university, it's a
decision
limiting
making, you're
factor.
a dependent, like you can't make a lot of big life decisions. You can't just decide to leave your house. I guess you could, but it's like more risky to do those kinds of things and it's super taboo. But now we're entering a point where that ceiling has sort of been lifted and the potential is so much higher. Like we could literally do whatever it is that we desire, and
Mm-hmm.
so blessed to be in a place where the opportunities for us to do the things that we want are pretty much endless. It's just a matter of taking those steps and making those risks. But that's what like is really exciting for me, especially because we're entering into our 20s and stuff like that, is that the potential for where we could go is so much higher than it's ever been in our lives so far. And we're still young and stuff like that. That's just really exciting. Plus we're coming to the end of a pandemic, so like it seems like things are going to fall in place. That's just my personal belief.
Yeah.
Well, I think what it almost comes down to is the bounds are widening. So right now, sure,
Mm,
our lower bound is high, but our higher bound is low. So we have
yeah.
this tight set of bounds. So I guess as long as we continue to challenge ourselves and do the best that we can, we won't be anywhere near what the lower bound is because as soon as we got out of college and stuff, lower bound drops drastically. Like it goes down to like basically zero. Upper bound is the sky. So literally
Yeah.
we have no bounds whatsoever. So as long as we're doing something
And listen,
effective
I'm
and
here to
good for
take
society,
risks. I'm here to take risks, bro. That's it.
yeah,
I'm
well
taking every risk possible. That's
then you
it,
can
bro.
go high. Then your bounds are
That's
right.
it.
Like that's what the thing is. There are no bounds, which is the nice thing.
It's like
You can do
it's
whatever
like
you
okay,
like.
we went through 2020. Like, how much worse could it get? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, let me fail. Like, oh, what are you gonna do, right? Like, you don't scare me no more.
Yeah, man.
I'm
Like,
just out here, bro. Like, who? If you told me I'd be doing some podcast stuff like that, be like, no way, man. I'm doing a podcast a couple years ago,
It's funny.
right?
This was a spur of the moment thing from finessing
Yeah,
into WeWork
like,
because of a
bro,
podcast, because of
I
something
do
else that
not
happened.
care, bro. I do not care. Like, that's it. Like,
It's
I am willing to take risks, and then I'm willing to fail. And I'm like, it just,
we aren't
yeah,
here to
it's.
take part. We're here to take over.
shit, dude.
Yeah,
No, but like you guys are right, man. Like a couple days ago, I turned 20, and I thought like it was gonna be like every other birthday where like not much changes, or like but like I don't know, there was something like inside of me where it was like, dude, like I'm in my 20s now, like there's so much more opportunity now, and it's like no other birthdays kind of felt like that. Like usually it's like, oh, I'm 17 now, because like even 18, like everyone tells you you're an adult, but like okay, like what are you really like,
yeah,
So I don't know, but like 20s are exciting, bro. Like excited to start working in the actual like professional workplace and stuff, and
Mhm.
save lives as a paramedic, and go down that path. But
yeah.
I'm really just looking forward to opportunity, and
Well, I
like I
think.
think, yeah,
Oh, sorry. You, all yours. My bad.
yeah. I just think like I'm definitely a lot more open to opportunity now, than I was before 2020. Like before, I was kind of like if someone like offered me to do a podcast, I probably would have been a lot more. I probably would have said no, right? But I think like this year's taught me like you gotta take advantage of what you got and go forward with that.
Well, yeah, I think before this year, the uncertainty after university and all that stuff would have been a lot more daunting and would have been looked at as a negative, as opposed to after like the growth of this year. I definitely think the uncertainty, the openness is kind of a positive, right? Like it's amazing how much opportunity there is out there. It's kind of sort of like before what it was like you getting dropped into the middle of the ocean. What's underneath there? Super scary, right? Who knows? There could be a shark. There
Yeah.
could be whatever, whatever, whatever. But I guess you flip it. That's almost the awesome thing about it is you don't know what to expect. It can shake you around, but you can always fight your way through it. Like unless you like straight up hit rock bottom insane, which I mean, it is possible. It's highly unlikely, but possible. You can always fight your way back up out of whatever happens.
Yeah.
Like there's no definitive end in what happens after this now.
Especially how young we are. Like, it might be a little bit naive to be like, I don't care about the risk. And it's like, like screw everything. Like, I don't care. But like, I think that being naive a little bit to um the risks associated with things is good sometimes, because then you're willing to take those steps, right? Because if you're not, if you're older and you have a lot of responsibilities, kids to take care of, family to care for, people to provide for, stuff like that, it's harder for you to take those risks because there's so much more on the line. Plus,
Wait,
you've had so much more life experience that all the sharks and stuff that live underneath in, the dark place of the ocean or
well, I
whatever.
think the
But
thing is,
when
yeah,
you're
when you're
naive,
older,
you're willing to dive head first and be like, screw it all, because worst comes to worst, like, I don't have a lot of these responsibilities and obligations that other people who are older have. Plus, you know what? I don't know what's down there, and I'm fine with not knowing what's down there, and I'm okay with that, right?
well, the thing is, yeah, the family stuff. As soon as you have a family, that's when I think you have to cut the risks because your decision making then impacts a bunch of people. I think as long
So
as
then
your
it's
decision
simple. We
making
just
only
never have
impacts
a
you,
family.
it's like when your decision making only impacts you, you're willing to take those risks because it's like, what happens? Oh, I impact myself. Okay,
Yeah.
but it's just you just don't want to impact others, which is fair enough. But
Yeah.
as long as you make decisions that challenge yourself, impact you, and it's like if they hurt you in a negative way, so be it. You lose a couple months, a bit of money. You can earn money back. You can build yourself back up from whatever it is, right? Money is what's the word? It's replaceable.
Yeah. It comes and goes, bro. They're printing more of it each day. Like,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. So, yeah, that's what's really exciting uh for me about 2020 or 2021. And the real interesting thing is too, it's like we're entering into our 20s, which I guess is like times of opportunity and stuff like that. But it's also the end of a pandemic, right? It's
End of
the
a
end of a
pandemic
low,
and childhood.
right? So
I'd
it's
consider.
almost like these two things kind of came together,
Stars
where
aligned,
this
bro.
low, which this pandemic is a big low in a lot of our lives, it needs to be followed by a high. And that's my personal philosophy. Is I believe like it has to be up and down, up and down, up and down. So just like if you're at a real high point, then you can expect some troubles to come in your future. But if you are at a real low point, then you can expect that some really high points are gonna come. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like if we're just coming up from that low point, then that is something to be really grateful for. Something that's like a real blessing that these things are all happening right at this moment.
Well, yeah, because then you know what comes after a low. It has to be up,
It
right?
has to be high. That's like, you know what I'm saying? The sun sets, the sun's got to rise the next morning. That's it, right? Eventually, it has to finish.
It's cyclical.
Right?
It's like the stock market.
It's
It's like the
all
house. Everything.
cyclical.
It's
It's all
cyclical.
cyclical.
Sure, there'll
Right?
be peaks and troughs, or I guess not. There will be valleys and there'll be mountains. So there'll be the highest of the highs, lows to the lows. But often it's just kind of shifting in between. But knowing right now it's at the lowest of the lows, this is when you take the most advantage of it. You can gain the fastest, because you're going from absolute rock bottom to, sure, if it goes absolute rock bottom to the middle, that's still an insane jump. You could absolute bottom to sky high, and it's insane how much opportunity is there.
No, it's exciting. It's exciting. So, 2020 has kind of been a tough year. That's for sure. And it's not like we want to take away from the difficulties of this year. Definitely, like, we've been blessed that we've remained healthy and safe, and so have our families. And a lot of other people have not been that fortunate. So today we didn't want to take away from those experiences, but we really wanted to highlight some positive elements, because in looking for positive things, I think we get positive things in return. And if we're always looking for negative things, then just more negative things are gonna come, right?
Dude, it's
That's like what the
saying,
news
bro.
does. Like, no offense to the news, but they really do suck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're just trying to flip the narrative a little bit.
Dude, it's like the saying, bro. Blessed are the grateful. Like if you're grateful in life,
Exactly.
then you'll be
Exactly.
blessed, bro. Because like if you start looking for like the positives in life, then you'll start noticing them more. Like for example, like if you see, like if you find out your friend has like this new car, you're gonna start seeing cars like his on this road a lot more, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or like somebody gets a Toyota Corolla, like a 2020 Toyota Corolla, right? You'll be like, oh wow, now you start seeing it a lot more, right? Because like you before, your brain wasn't used to, like it had no association to that thing, right? But now it knows what that thing is, and now it's just gonna start noticing it more, right? So when you start looking for those good things, right? Like you say, okay, you know what? I'm really grateful for being able to have like a warm meal every night before I go to sleep or whatever, right? And so like just look at the positives, man. Like I know this year's been tough. I know we've all been through a lot, but I think if we can just focus, like just start noticing them more, then we'll just start noticing greater things in life,
Yeah.
right? Let's start the
Yeah, I
great.
think down the road, we should not forget about the negatives that happened this year, especially in the future. You look back at this, be like, those are what caused me to grow, develop as a person. You never want to forget the negatives and the develop you went through before because of them, or I feel like you'll return back to the way you were before,
Yeah.
because you'll
You want to
forget
learn
about them,
from
right?
them.
Yeah, you always want to have them in the back of your head, be like, oh yeah, tough times. Look what I did back here in 2020 with all these challenges.
Yeah.
I moved, changing the person this way, this way, this way.
And look
It'll
at
be
the
able
things
to
I
build
didn't
yourself up.
do. And look at the things I didn't do and the things that I should have done, so that when you're presented with, the low of the low again, and, inevitably it's going to come. Like, it's not just going to be uphill from here. Eventually bad times are going to come. And when those bad times come, to be like, okay, last time this happened, I didn't do this and this and this. And this and this and this should have been done. So now that I've learned from that experience, how can I change and do that better? Like, there's some habits that I wish I would have done at the start of quarantine that I think would have made me a lot more prepared for an extended quarantine that I didn't do, right? just like taking care of myself initially at the very start of quarantine. Didn't take care of myself very well, right? I was like, okay, let me just get by because this thing is going to be over soon. So if I just get by, then I'll be fine. But, you know, reality is that it wasn't just something that passed really soon. We were in it for like 8 months, right?
Yeah.
So if this comes around again, now I've learned from that experience, knowing, okay, don't treat something just like, okay, let me get by. Instead, learn from it and try to better equip yourself for the tough times. You know, one of my favorite quotes is from Jim Rohn. He was like, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. Like, that's like such an amazing thing to me, because it's like, oh, I'll just stick to it and like eventually it'll pass by and then like, okay, we'll be fine. But that's not what you should wish for, is just for it to get better really quick. Instead, you should wish for you to get better instead of the circumstance, right?
Yeah, well, you
For
wish
your
you
skills
had
to
better
get
tools. You wish you had better tools for the
Exactly.
situation.
Right? Yeah, like the person in the winter who's going skiing, he doesn't mind the winter too much. But if you're wearing a t-shirt, you'll probably get frostbite,
You're like, I
right?
wish I
But
had
if you
that
have a
winter
winter
jacket.
jacket, like you're well equipped, then the winters aren't as bad.
Yeah, well, it's being, as long as you have the tools in the shed to prepare with any of the challenges, you just pull them out, fix the problems, and you'll persevere through it. You'll be good. But it's those
Yeah.
times when you don't have the tools, it'll really hit hard. And I guess that's when you have to take the time to go work on yourself to then build the tool for the whatever situation it is that presents itself.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, that's all we have for you guys today on Grateful Fridays. Be sure to join us next Monday for Meaningful Mondays. We are going to be talking about getting caught up in what other people are doing and focusing on your own path and your own mission and your own journey. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok, where you can find highlights. We're also available on all hosting platforms for podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud. You can find us everywhere. Be sure to share this podcast with one friend who you think could benefit from it or could enjoy the conversation.
Don't forget to check us out on YouTube as well. We got our video, got the video format over there, releasing the same time as all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. So if you want to see what we're looking like while we're talking, you can always find us there.